Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat and welcome to another heart-opening, if not mind-stimulating episode of ResilienSerye, our companion program to the global search for the happiest Pinoy or Filipino, Cebuana Luwilier's flagship values-based program for recognizing the Filipinos' resilience and optimism amidst life challenges. Before we start, let's make this space feel a little lighter, a little warmer. Please type in the chat, "Joy is my strength today." Beautiful. You see, even one simple intention can shift our internal weather. Today's theme is joy as a strength, building inner stability amid uncertainty. In a world that keeps changing, sometimes faster than we expect, joy isn't just a nice feeling. It's a life skill, a daily discipline, and sometimes a gentle rebellion. This afternoon, we're very happy to have someone respected in the Brahma Kumaris family from around the world, one of the most recognized international teachers and speakers of the Brahma Kumaris. She's based in Brahma Kumaris, London, in the United Kingdom, and has spent more than 30 years teaching empowerment, values-based education, including meditation to diverse audiences around the world. She's a natural bridge builder, engaging youth organizations, NGOs, corporations, and interfaith groups. She frequently represents the Brahma Kumaris to the United Nations meetings, global peace dialogues, and environmental and social development platforms. Over the years, she has traveled across Europe, Asia, the Middle East, Africa, Australia, and the Americas, leading retreats, leadership workshops, public talks, and other high-level discussions. Her presence brings clarity, lightness, and quiet power. Please join me in welcoming BK Gopi Patel. Gopi, good afternoon, and thank you for being with us for this session on ResilienSerye.
Thank you so much, Jonathan. Thank you. It's really a pleasure and an honor to support this movement for joy and happiness in the Philippines, which I think couldn't be a more accurate note for these times that we're in. So I really welcome the opportunity to be with all of you this afternoon. I was very struck by the title, Joy as Strength, because my name, Gopi, actually means source of joy. Lover of God, but the one that experiences supersensuous joy. And it's funny because in all these years of teaching, and it's been almost 37 years, nobody's ever asked me about joy. And so the first invitation I received from Jonathan and the request to talk about joy as strength was an absolute delight and pleasure. I'm sitting in India, one of the oldest civilizations in the world. And every day I get to witness an abundance of people resilience, an abundance of tolerance, an abundance of happy people. Somehow, despite all the tendencies or crippling tendencies of the economy, the poverty, the personal life situations, there seems to be this ability in this culture and this people to just keep going. And there are two words for happiness in India, in Bharat, in the culture here. And I think understanding this terminology will help us to start to understand the mindset that helps us to sustain real joy, quiet joy, inside ourselves and in our activity, in our relationships. And so the first word is Khushi. And Khushi is the joy and the happiness that comes from selfless serving. So, we want to see people in our life happy. We want to be happy. We want to make others happy. And yet, the selfless bit is sometimes missing. So I'm going to tackle the illusions to happiness a little bit later. But this whole aspect of when I'm serving or when I'm interacting, to what degree do I remain selfless? And that will determine the level of khushi I experience in a connection with a person whilst doing something, whilst going about my day-to-day life, or whilst fulfilling my life's purpose. And the second word is sukh. Sukh means this is the happiness beyond the senses. So the khushi is linked to the senses. It could be a sensory stimulation. Somebody took you on a beautiful cruise, a trip, you had a day at a spa. And so khushi is that experience of happiness is very much linked to sensory stimulation, our interactions with people. But sukh is much, much more spiritual. Sukh, they talk about the joy beyond the senses. And we all know now, against the backdrop of the spiritual dialogues that are taking out there, that the role of consciousness and spirit as identity is growing hugely in our awareness. And this is where meditation plays a big role, because the subject of stability is deeply linked to understanding and experiencing this level of joy that is beyond the senses, that is connected to my original state. It's who I am. It is the state, it's like coming home to yourself very deep inside, beyond the labels, beyond the positions, beyond the roles, beyond the masks, where you settle into your groove, and that's who you are. And it's such a quiet but very deeply nourishing experience. And when you start to experience sukh in your life, that level of deep inner joy, this is what helps us stabilize our mind, our emotions, and also clean our perspective in life. Because, if we just experience khushi, which is a sensory stimulation, going out, fulfilling my purpose, doing everything, making people happy, but I don't balance that with sukh, which is that deep experience of happiness, bliss, that's so deeply connected with inner peace. And that's why inner peace and joy are synonymous, right? They're both very deeply connected to each other. If I can't sustain my inner peace, I can't sustain that level of sukh beyond the senses that makes me who I am. And when you experience that level of sukh and that level of joy deeply beyond the senses, you become an unstoppable force, because your happiness has no conditions anymore. Your joy has no price tag anymore. It is what it is. You are who you are, like the sun, right? The sun doesn't need permission to shine. The sun will shine to its fullest. Does not matter if the clouds come in between. It's not going to complain. Why are the clouds here today? The sun is not going to complain if you go and stand inside the room or stand under the shade of a tree. The job of the sun is to shine. And it's not apologetic for being what it is. And so in the same way, when we connect with that depth and that foundation of inner peace and bliss inside, we touch and we taste something beyond the senses, and we start to understand our identity differently. So much of our identity today, because this is an identity issue, so something that is so fragile. Think about just one thing. Think about this, the human skin, which is, creating so much a crisis, mental crisis and upheaval in people's worlds today. I mean, this thing is 1/17 of an inch thick. And yet it can govern completely my state of mind. Can you imagine? If you peel this off, we are exactly the same underneath, flesh and bones. And if you go further deep inside, we are spiritual beings that share the same values. And yet this very, very thin layer that binds everything together has deceived us into believing that it is the foundation of our identity. And you know, the world promotes this form of bodily awareness to such an extent that if you don't look beautiful, if you don't wear the latest hairstyle, the latest clothes, the latest thing, you're not accepted in society. You're not going to be happy. So there's a lot of illusions around happiness we break. But, you know, I started meditating when I was 8 years old. I was here in Mount Abu at our headquarters, and I discovered that one of the methods to sustaining a level of inner happiness and outer happiness is to create a level of intoxication inside myself. I've got to stay intoxicated with myself, my values, my passion, my purpose, my elevated thinking. I have to enjoy my own company. And the basis of that kind of intoxication, which is the fuel for happiness, is an internal dialogue with the self. You know, often we talk about the conversation being the relationship. And I'd like you to pause for a moment and just think about, what kind of conversation do you have with yourself every day? Because that is starting to generate the juice of intoxication of your own pride, right? Sustaining your pride, sustaining your joy needs fuel. Otherwise, we're plugging our sockets into plugs outside, a person here, an event here, a memory from the past here. And we don't often recognize that actually the fuel for my happiness lies inside me. It lies in cultivating A, my sense of inner peace, and B, cultivating a very healthy, nourishing dialogue with myself. So when we look at these two ingredients as the basis of sukh, inner joy, then you know what? You may have a list of a gazillion things to do in a day, but when you feel anchored in yourself, you use the power of this peace and joy to sustain it. It's like keeps you buoyant whilst you're reflecting on the next project you have to accomplish here. You know, one of the hats I wear is I coordinate the whole environment, health and safety initiative for the BKs here in India, especially at the headquarters. And we host every 10 days for about maybe in a month, for about 2 weeks, we host 20,000 people on our campuses. And you can imagine the logistics of supporting and sustaining 20,000 people, from water to food to electricity. They get 3 meals a day. And so, you know, working on all of our campuses to make sure that we align with what is environmentally friendly. And just very recently, in the last 2 months, we've managed in rural Rajasthan, right in the outbacks of nothing, build the first biogas plant. So we recycle all our waste now. And this is a first in this state in India, in the rural parts of India. So nothing is impossible. But of course, everything is a predicament. It's not a problem, it's a predicament, which is like, you know, a whole load of things tangled in between that just need to be sorted out. Bit of like a jumble sale where you just need to sort a few things out, put things in the right place, and then everything finds its rhythm and its order. And that's what I realized, that when you're anchored in yourself, it creates a form of purity inside. It's like you stay pure and clean inside because you're connected with your values. The peace provides you with a perspective that keeps you clear about what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false. And when you sustain a level of purity in your feelings towards yourself, through healthy dialogue, towards others, by staying constructive in our speech, then you sustain a buoyancy of positive feeling. And that's what sustains the foundation of cleanliness, because joy and happiness need cleanliness to survive. Where something's dirty inside, or something's become mixed, or someone's become influenced, I've become influenced by somebody's stuff, first thing that goes and evaporates is your joy and your happiness. So happiness is a very truthful entity. But happiness, when it speaks to us, it says, I need you to remain clean. I need you to remain clean in your thoughts towards people. I need you to remain clean in your feelings towards yourself and towards others. And it's a simple practice, but it takes a lot of attention. And I know that in all my over 4 decades of meditation, meditation is one of the most powerful methodologies to keep your emotions, your mental state clean and clear. It is something that requires regular practice. So I want to pause here for a moment, and I want to invite you into a practice. And I'll call this practice the detached observer, because it's something that we do need in our lives. It's one of the principles of Raj Yoga meditation that we teach here at the Brahma Kumaris, one of several principles and practices, poses of meditation that we teach that help us to sustain a spiritual and an inner focus whilst we're handling situations outside. So we're going to start with some breathing, very simple breathing, focusing our attention inside. I'm going to ask you, it's okay if you haven't meditated before. Any time is a time to start. I will be speaking some words, guiding words, and I would encourage you to follow those words. And if you find your mind wandering off in between somewhere, it's okay. Bring your mind back to the words being offered and start the flow again. Okay, so wherever you may be sitting, just sit up straight, both feet on the floor, and just make the body, serene and loose and relaxed, not too relaxed that you fall asleep, because it might be siesta time right now. And just do a little bit of a check. Keep your eyes very slightly open and just scan your body for any tension you may be holding. And now I'd like you to take a deep, slow breath in through your nose. Breathe in deeply. Hold it. And as you release your breath on the out breath slowly, just feel all that tension flowing out through your out breath. So give the tension a channel to exit out of your body. It could be tension in your shoulders, your neck, your stomach, your legs, your shoulders. So take another deep breath in, hold, and exhale slowly through your mouth. And just allow the tension to channel out through your breath. And take another very deep breath in. And hold. And this time on the out breath, bring your attention into this moment now. And another deep breath in. And again, as you breathe out slowly, pull all your awareness and concentration into this moment now. And use your breath to guide you back inside and back into this moment now. And now just allow your attention to follow this flow of your breath. And just for a few moments, appreciate this life you have. And as you follow the flow of this breath, let your awareness follow it to the source. Who is making this body breathe? Just start to become aware of a very subtle current of energy inside. It's separate from the costume of this body. There's a very subtle, quiet energy, power source inside. It's making this whole system work. I'd like you to just visualize that current of energy and see it rising up from your legs, up through your chest, up through your arms, converging through your neck. All of that current, that life force, that prana, that chi, whatever you want to call it, soul force, rising up and concentrating behind the eyes, in the middle of the forehead, into a ball of light. And for a few moments, just step away from the mask of this body, the name and form of the body, and let yourself become this ball of light. Just let yourself become completely light. It's the light behind the mask, the light that powers this body, the cells of this body, the light behind the name and form of this body. And for a few moments, as you give yourself the permission to just let everything else go, all the people in your life, the situations in your life, and just let yourself be this light. Now in your mind, I'd like you to repeat this sentence 3 times slowly. I, the inner being of light, am a being of peace. And surrender to this. I, the inner being of light, am a being of peace. I, the inner being of light, am a being of peace. And feel yourself inside, like in the room of your mind. The world is outside, and you are in your light and peace inside. And now I'd like you to take your right hand and put it over your heart. Stay in this awareness of being light inside, and just perceive the heartbeat. And from this space of lightness and peace, I'd like you to generate a good wish for yourself. Now, generate a good wish for all the people in your life. And now, generate a good wish for the world. And just let yourself, a few moments, become a lighthouse of good wishes. Thank you. I'm sure that you must be feeling much softer by now, a little bit lighter. And it feels so good to do this work of stepping inside, anchoring ourselves inside, and then serving through the purity and cleanliness of our feelings and our vibrations. This is the basis of constantly being happy. Now, it is a practice that, or a muscle that needs to be worked every day in many ways. And the more you strengthen this practice of anchoring yourself inside and sending out those good wishes, especially first thing in the morning. I always say, to remain happy in your life, no matter what, you have to win your morning. And what do I mean by winning your morning? Science now tells us that whatever you think and feel in the first 10 minutes of waking up, that is what creates your mood for the entire day. Now, in the Indian sciences and philosophies, we've known this for centuries here, because the time of 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning is considered the time of nectar. It's a time where you can open yourself up to something beyond, to the divine, to draw power, and experience a very deep level of peace inside the soul. And so, science has proved this now. And so when I wake up first thing in the morning, what am I doing? Am I reaching out for my mobile phone? Am I checking all the social media feeds? Have I just handed over my mind to several social feeds? Or am I waking up in the morning, taking a few moments to just feel myself inside and say good morning to myself, say good morning to the world, to say good morning to the divine, to just take this opportunity to send out a red carpet of good wishes for myself, my day, and the people in my life. Because this little routine of 10 minutes in the morning can change your whole mood significantly throughout the day. We know how powerful a mood is. So being happy is about creating a powerful mood, right? A mood is like a vibrational armor. And once you set the frequency of that mood to a particular level and you've sealed that armor, which means you can go through your day and people will throw things at you. The weather might not be good, but your mood sustains your mindset. And that's so important. We know that when we're in a good mood, nothing is a problem. Everything's okay. We can move through it. But when we're in a bad mood, even if it's a sunny day, we don't have anything to be positive about. So creating and cultivating our mood first thing in the morning is essential practice to sustaining our happiness. And then, I want to take up the subject of contentment because I wonder, and I want you to think about this, is it possible to be happy and discontent? Maybe that happiness is temporary. Maybe it's a temporary fix. So if you don't get that in the way you want it, then you can be discontent. But real happiness has a very deep bond with contentment. And the basis of contentment is the ability, and meditation produces this. The more you meditate, the more you are able to accept your state in any given set of circumstances at any point in time. Whatever I am, however I am, I'm enough. I'm enough. And contentment is this ability to just accept what I am right now as I am, and everything I have as I am. And meditation, when we start cultivating inner peace, we start opening this door to self-acceptance at a very deep level. Even a diamond, when it's first found, it's in the dust. You don't recognize it. It's got a core outside of it. But when it's chipped away and shaped, then you see the beautiful diamond. So all of us are a little bit like that. We're kind of diamonds in the dust. And then life and God have a huge mission to polish us, shine us, make us a bit sharper, and, to bring the diamond out of us. And I think that contentment is regarded as the mother of all virtue. And so when we cultivate a very quiet contentment inside, then you know what? Our peace, our inner wisdom, our inner peace, our joy can start to support others to become happy. There is a myth, especially in human relationships. We tackled the first myth that, I'm more than this skin and this body and this material thing. I'm something that's deeply spiritual inside. But the second myth in relationships is very much around I have to please somebody to make them happy. I have to make someone happy. And I think in this myth, there's somehow this misunderstanding that if they're happy, then I'll be happy. So in many ways, you end up mortgaging your own happiness to try and make somebody else happy. And I'll be frank with you, I have yet to see a person that has done this successfully. Because, we spend a lot of our time pleasing the people around us, and yet nobody appreciates the efforts we make. Nobody turns around to say thank you. And they're never happy. They've always got something to complain about, and we're never happy. So it's not a win-win situation to sustain this myth. And if you think, and if you get pulled into this addiction of, well, let me just do this for them, because if I do this for them, they'll be happy, then everything will be okay. It doesn't work like that. You have to claim back your position first. That's one of the most important things. You can't mortgage yourself and sacrifice yourself, especially your own peace, to make somebody else peaceful and happy. It doesn't work. So step one is, that whole thing, oh, let me just do something for them. You almost like you have to look at this pattern inside and you have to challenge this. Why? What do I need to do and be right now to be happy first? So anchor yourself in your joy and peace first, and then think about what you can offer within your capacity to another person. Because many times, as we nourish this myth, sustain this myth of pleasing people, we end up losing our power. And, we end up burnt out, dissatisfied, unhappy ourselves. So I think this is something that needs to be looked at and examined, especially when we're attached to people around us. And I'll tell you a story. My father passed away 2 years ago after a very happy life, that he'd had cancer about 30 years ago. And he'd had a very rare form of lymphatic cancer around the neck. And in those days, radiation isn't as refined as it is today. So they had given him 33 sessions of radiation, which had literally peeled the skin off his chest and neck. And 25 years later, or 26 years later, he's starting to lose movement in his upper arms. We don't realize, but the esophageal reflux muscle isn't working, so food is going into his lungs, and he starts to develop all these kind of complications almost overnight, actually. But they'd been building because the nerves had died. And he ended up having a heart attack, spending 4 months in hospital during COVID. And I was called back from a trip to nurse him because my whole family was down with COVID. And I remember flying back in from South Africa and just having 2 hours to turn myself around, go to the hospital and be with him. And he couldn't move his arms. So, he needed somebody to feed him. And if we weren't there, he would have died because that kind of care just wasn't available. So, I remember walking into his room and I'm watching him, and the physio had come at that point and was showing him how to ride and pedal a bike. And he's kind of doing it half-heartedly. And the physio is saying, Mr. Patel, you've got to walk at least 100 steps a day. Here's how you should walk. Hold your railings and move your feet like this. And then I'm watching him kind of, give it a half-hearted shot. And of course, in my heart, he's my dad. And you have this feeling, come on, Dad, do what she's saying. Come on. It's like you want to compensate. I think that's what people pleasing does, is it makes us overcompensate in relationships. What makes us want to make the effort for them. But the reality is it's their karmic lot. And if they don't make the effort, they're not going to walk themselves out of it. So I remember that feeling coming up and I had to stop it. And I said, no, Gopi, just be a detached observer. Just watch him for a few days. Don't try and tell him what to do. Don't try and make him do anything. And that's what I did. I just sat there. I just observed him for a couple of days. I shared news of my travels. And, interesting, after a couple of days, he says to me, can I ask you a question? I said, yes. He said, do you think I'll make it? And I said, well, I don't think that's a question for me to answer. I think it's a question for you to answer. And he says, what are you seeing? And I said, well, what I'm seeing is a person who's been a meditator for 48 years, has done amazing things in his life for others, and he's just giving up because he can't move his hands. And is that how you want to leave? Is that the memorial you want to leave it? Just give up? all those years of wonderful effort, wonderful abundance, wonderful joy in your life, and just give up over something like this because you're fed up with yourself? So, Dad, I'm not here to make you do anything. It's going to be your choice. If you want to walk out of this hospital, you need to make a choice that either you give up now and just continue your half-hearted attempts and suffer right until the end, lose all the income, spiritual income you've earned in your life, or you pull yourself together, make the effort that's needed until your last breath, until God himself comes and picks you up and it's time for you to go. But you need to leave happy. You need to leave alive and kicking, having given your best shot at every moment. And I left him that evening. And the next morning when I came back, he was on that pedal bike. He'd gotten my brother online to make an Excel spreadsheet of how many steps per day he had to do. And he slowly pulled himself together, and he pulled himself out of hospital in 2 months. It was incredible. So the power of detachment and true love means that you don't compensate for somebody else's effort. You're there as a source of inspiration, clarity, peace, truth, detachment, because all those resources are reaching that soul. That energy is reaching that soul, but they have to make the choice. And that there is nothing more empowering in human relationship than to be in such a way that allows somebody else to make a choice, their choice in their presence towards their truth. So this is where I feel our happiness and our joy, that anchor in our peace, can bring us a profound clarity to help individuals in the most difficult of circumstances find their strength, find their purpose, and find their way out of anything. So I'd like to take a little pause here and hand over back to Jonathan. Of course, this is a topic that's very close to my heart. So if you give me a whole day, we'll have plenty to talk about. But yeah, I'll stop there.
No. But thank you, Gopi. In just 40 minutes, you've given us a tsunami of wisdom. In just 40 minutes, you actually gave us very refreshing insights. And I just wish, we can have a second part of this. But we're now opening the session to the Q&A portion. Some of the questions are actually already posted in our chat room. But before I actually just ask one of the questions, Gopi, I'd like your concept of kushi and suk. These are relatively two new concepts for the Filipinos. Kushi is plain happiness, and suk means beyond sensory stimulation.
Correct.
In social media, there's so much pressure on consumerism and patronage and buy this and buy that. Which means that the promotion to these material goods actually is something that's reaching to the highest levels. And many people actually think that gratifying sensory perceptions or by purchasing these goods and services makes them actually happy. So how do I become detached so that I do not become influenced by social media and too much consumerism?
Yeah. How much time have you got, Jonathan? Look, anything that you find yourself being influenced by, you have identified with. That's why it starts to influence you. Okay? So we have to take this conversation back to the roots of identity and what it is that I'm identifying with, identifying my sense of self with.
Mm-hmm.
And if I am seeking external validation, where I feel, okay, well, the amount of things I have, I'll be able to experience a level of happiness. Yeah, it feels comfortable. Comfort and happiness are two separate things.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So people may lull themselves into a false sense of comfort, but they're not necessarily happy. Because happy is an energy that circulates. Happiness is an energy that circulates. right? Comfort can be static. You can go into a comfort zone, as they say. So I think we have to come back to the subject of identity. I have over the years, this one question, who am I? It's $1 million question. You can answer it in one question, in one word, but it will take you a lifetime to truly realize yourself at your core. And I think this is the door we need to open at a very deep level, each one of us. We need to have the courage to step away from the perceived notions of our temporary selves, right? So, Jonathan, I'm a CEO of this company. I'm in this foundation. I'm doing this. Okay, just take a few moments. So what's behind this? What's actually fueling this passion to make others happy? Let's go behind that. Let's keep going until you can't ask why anymore and you hit the core of what you are. That's when you're getting to something that is very deep, very fundamental, very original, and very eternal. And this is something nobody can take away from you, right? And I think we don't have enough of a spiritual education in our society that helps us introspect and helps us to go from the level of desire back to the level of happiness. And this is the education we need to start bringing into ourselves. But it begins with this very simple question: who am I? Keep asking yourself until you can't answer it anymore, and you hit a place and you go, yeah.
That identity crisis is actually something that perhaps let you personify yourself, or let you attach yourself to the roles and labels and the material possessions, because of that vacuum and that inability to identify the real self as more than the material body, but a spiritual being. Maybe that's something that we need to shift our consciousness to have a long-lasting happiness. And one way for that, actually, Gopi, is you mentioned earlier, you need to enjoy your own company, right? So can you please elaborate further on how I can be able to enjoy? It's paradoxical and seemingly ironic that I need to be happy and I need to enjoy my own company, right? Can you please elaborate on this?
I think they're actually quite deeply connected. But one of the things, as you were speaking about identity, we have a story here in India, a story of a person who was in a house and he thought he was a bull. And even though the front door of the house was opened, he kept saying to himself, I'm a bull, I'm a bull, I'm a bull, I'm a bull. And so he thought he was so big that he couldn't leave the door of his house. So he ended up being jailed in his house. So identity crisis, inner enjoyment, sustaining happiness, deeply connected, because whatever I think I am is what ultimately becomes the jail I live in, right? Even though my potential might be much greater. That's why I say, who am I, is a very important question. And part of this dialogue of enjoying my company is, yes, we have got all these kind of labels of I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not pure enough, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that, which just, we create this prison and then we scream in this prison. But we keep repeating this dialogue inside ourselves. And at some point, breaking through that dialogue, starting another dialogue, just pick up a pen and paper and just let that self that's complaining write to you. Okay? So I'm not worthy. Okay, then ask it, who is this saying this? Why do you feel unworthy? What would you like? Start a conversation with it. Don't try and reject it, suppress it, deny it. Just start a conversation with it, because behind sadness is joy. Behind unhappiness is happiness. Every emotion has a polar opposite. So if you don't start dialoguing with one end of it, you won't get to the other end. And, sometimes there is an intelligence in sadness that is telling us, it's giving us a signal for something. It's asking us to just acknowledge something. That's all. And we just need to hear it out. And then, okay, no big deal. Let's move on. But when something is ignored, or if you resist yourself in any way, I don't want to be like this. It's okay. It's a cloud passing in this moment in time. You are not the cloud. You are the light beyond the cloud. But it doesn't mean that the cloud defines your light. right? And so I think this kind of journaling and conversation with your own emotions can help you kind of loosen up a bit, just relax a bit. Hey, it's okay. We're all
Yeah.
coming into this life. We're we warriors on a battlefield. We can be students in the school, warriors on a battlefield. We're going to have some scars. It's okay. Whatever I am, however I am, I'm enough. Let's pull it together and let's take one more step forward.
Uh-huh. Gopi, can you share with us some inner dialogue, sample of inner dialogue, so that these are thoughts that I can be able to make use of during my meditation?
I think the foundation of a dialogue is really to bring yourself into a space of introversion first,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's very important. And that's where
Mm-hmm.
we started with our meditation with breathing and breath,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because it pulls our attention from an extrovert
Mm-hmm.
plugged out into internal, where we just allow a very subtle release to happen. We can let things be as they are outside.
Mm-hmm.
And we create a space of introversion, right? And within that space of introversion, one of the things that I like to do is just in some few moments is just observe. Just observe what's coming up in my mind, right? What's the thought coming up in my mind? What's the feeling coming up in my mind? Sometimes if they're inspiration, I write them down. Sometimes I don't need to write them down. And then what I do is I go one step further, I tend to go, okay, who is creating this thought? Who's having this thought? What's their intention behind this thought? It's like I'm talking to another person, right? That whatever I'm observing is another person. So I'm like, who's creating this thought? What's behind this thought? So I'm seeking to understand the being that's generating these thoughts and feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And it just makes me so soft in that moment, because then I don't need to over identify with what I'm thinking, get hooked up on my ideas or my attachment, my opinions, etc. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm creating a softer place of relationship to seek to understand the being that's generating these thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and feelings.
Yeah, that inner dialogue can actually make yourself to be your best friend or your worst
Absolutely.
enemy, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, I'd like to ask some of the questions posted in the chat room now. There are actually plenty.
Oh, wow.
Um, right. There's one from Rainiel. Would glad to hear some tips and habits that we can practice in protecting our inner peace while being surrounded by stress and negativity, especially in the workplace, Gopi. And not only
Look,
that, in the workplace, but even in your respective homes, when you go back to your homes, you have relationships and roles also to play. With all of this, how do we now handle and remain still happy?
Look, we bring ourselves into everything we do and into every relationship we interact, every person we interact with, right? So, one of the bread and butter of sustain is that morning meditation I was talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
10 minutes, 15 minutes in the morning, that has to be foolproof. You have to put that in place.
Okay.
Because if you don't put that in place, you can't anchor your mood at a higher frequency, right? And then you need to understand how frequencies work. It's a bit like how a radio station works. Radio station's got different channels, different frequencies. When you're at 105, you're listening to classic FM. You can't hear what's at 88 FM, which is the
Right.
news of the world. Okay, but if you're at 88, you can't hear what's at 105. So first thing in the morning, tuning that frequency to 105 is crucial. And that's why timing is important. You can't just wing it with 1 or 2 minutes of meditation. It takes at
Mm-hmm.
least 20 minutes to tune into that frequency and to
Okay.
create a vibrational armor force, right? So that has to be pretty consistent every day. The
Mm-hmm.
second thing is throughout the day, yeah, we've got stuff going on, but there's a method that we practice here in the Brahma Kumaris, and the Japanese also practice, that's very similar in principle. We talk about traffic control here. And the Japanese talk about kaizen, which is the method of continuous development, which means take up a small practice and do it for 1 minute at the same time every day. So, for example, if I want to really just sustain the peace I felt in my morning meditation, then I'm going to take up this thought: I am the inner being. am a peaceful soul. And I'm just going to fix a minute, 1 minute at the same time every day. And I'm going to drop into this experience of peace. Now, something very interesting starts to happen. Why is it that we have set times for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? 8 o'clock, your stomach growls. 12 o'clock, your stomach growls. Because you programmed your timing like that. So it's the same way when you program that moment of peace every day, your system will call you back to that peace every day. It will remind you to be peaceful every day.
Mm-hmm.
So that 1 minute that's fixed at the same time every day is like the drop of continuous development, right? It kind of just refreshes the armor, keeps everything activated. And when you're at this frequency, let me tell you, you may have stressful people around you, but you know what? It's like water off a duck's back. I was just, I'm involved in a multi-million-dollar project here. I'm working with people from a very different culture, very different mindset. I have a very Anglo-Saxon mindset, which is logic, analysis, and planning. And in India, it doesn't work like that. You start with their emotions first. So to get anything done, I have to completely dismantle my whole thinking and agenda and strategy. And, just the other day, I had somebody who's really upset because they're working out of capacity and they just got so emotional and got so angry in the meeting at me. And I remember just looking at them. And I said, okay, is the volcano erupted now? Is it over now? Okay, can we speak now properly? And I was actually checking myself inside. Was I affected by their eruption? And I wasn't. And I realized, wow, all these years of dedicated attention to myself has helped me stabilize in a frequency where that eruption doesn't bother me.
Gopi, maybe that's also a manifestation of what you mentioned earlier about detachment. Now, there's a question of detachment here. How can I avoid being controlling and start being detached? Which is very relevant. Of what the case you
in
mentioned
any
earlier.
situation, any situation or relationship, first ask yourself the question, do I really need to act here or do I really need to speak here? You need to start there first. If you don't need to say anything and you don't need to do anything, don't. Okay? So that question, in its very nature, is going to help you disengage, because if you do anything karmically, if you speak unnecessarily, okay, or if you do something because you're just shooting from the hip, you're engaging karmically and you will be caught in a cycle of control and powerlessness. Okay. So it's better to just stop in a situation to say, do I need to contribute anything to this? If your conscience says no, zip it. Just be quiet, observe and listen. And this takes training, because I had a little Miss Goody Two Shoes in my head, right? That thinks they know it all, right? And I remember in the first meetings when I started practicing it, it's like everything was building up in my head. I've got to share this, I've got to know. Relax. You don't need to share anything. They're coming to that conclusion. They're finding their way there. Is this your story? Is this what you need to be involved in? No. You need to very deeply realize what your purpose is. When people don't understand their raison d'être, their reason for being, then they spend the rest of their life interfering in everybody else's stuff and making everybody else's stuff their issue. So you carry a justice, baggage with you. You carry people's sorrow with you, when actually it's none of your business, because you've got to start getting up and spreading your light, shining your light.
And perhaps not just only being able to not to be influenced by something external, but also to give good wishes. And this was part
crucial
of what you mentioned earlier. Can you please elaborate, how can even not probably articulating verbally, just in my mind, giving off good wishes can transform things?
Well, we have a very deep understanding of the spiritual trajectory for transformation, which is the seed of transformation begins with awareness. Awareness then creates my attitude, which is a vibrationary field. That attitude then influences my perception, right? And what I perceive then starts to manifest. In quantum physics, they talk about there are umpteen possibilities in any given moment in time. but it's the one observed that manifests.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, if you go backtrack, what am I observing? And if I'm seeing a problem, it means there's something in my feelings that's not clean. That's why I'm feeling something to be a problem, to see it as a problem, right? And then if you go to the root of it, which is awareness and linked deeply to identity, that's where it begins. So most times, most of us aren't aware of this inner trajectory that's in our control. My awareness, my attitude, my vision, my perception is in my control and in my hands to clean up. It forms 70% of my communication strategy. The words are just the tail end of something, right? But behind the words lies a lot.
Right.
Now, when I actually start to accept that my vibrations and my thoughts have a bigger impact than my words, then I start the inner alignment process. And then I realize that caring for myself is the same as serving another with love, right? It's not two separate things. When I look after my awareness and my attitude and my perception, then naturally I create a very clean flow where that love will reach another. So I'm actually caring for someone without even realizing it because I've
That's
cleaned
very,
myself up.
yeah, that's very enlightening and empowering, Gopi, which means that for me to be able to transform a person, even that person is 99% bad and 1% good, I need to shift my consciousness and maybe amplify the 1% so that,
Especially your attitude and perception.
right, the energy of my mind can actually help or reinforce, at least, to amplify even a 1% goodness of that person. It's very liberating and revolutionary at the same
It
time.
is.
Huh?
And if you think about it, Jonathan, all of life, think about how you've reached where you've reached today. Someone has sacrificed something for you. Somebody has given you good wishes. Somebody has pushed you here. You've got so many hands of various kinds of care and love that's brought you to where you are, right? And you're recycling that. So we have nothing to have ego about. We are just recycling good wishes that we've
Yeah.
received and we're passing it on. So when we
Okay.
understand that things are happening through us, not to us or from us,
Mm-hmm.
but happening through us, then we can learn to look after our minds. So
Yeah.
you don't hold anything negative or anything dirty in your mind, because if you do, you block that flow of good wishes from coming through
Gopi,
and letting it reach another.
which means that if one person curses me, how can I have that detachment so that I do not become influenced? I need to have a very powerful mind. I know, but how can we do that?
Well, very deeply, this was a question somebody asked Daddy Genki. If
Uh-huh.
somebody has bad wishes for me, how can I have good wishes for them?
Correct.
And she said something very interesting, and I think it's a very good tweak for your mind. Don't ever accept that anybody has bad wishes for you. Because if you accept that reality, it's a very limited reality, because in that moment, what is a bad wish? It's their cloud. It's a cloud of their own emotional, misunderstandings. It's just a cloud. And you're actually, by saying, oh, they're having bad wishes for me, you're saying that cloud is real. So
That's
what
where
you're saying,
that's where detachment should come in also, probably, right?
well, when I say I am light, you are light, we're just going through a cloudy phase, it's really staying true to that. And that requires a spiritual education. To lighten up is not just a visualization, imagination practice. You have to daily give yourself a dose of spiritual knowledge. You have to enlighten your mind, enlighten your intellect. You have to really seek a deeper understanding of spirituality,
Yeah.
and then have the practice of meditation to establish connection and set frequency,
So,
right?
Gopi, how do you handle a very uh, unreasonable boss who's always nagging and giving you actually a very challenging task? What should be my positive thought about that person? Should I accept, or should I be able to neutralize it in a way that's positive? And can you share
Okay.
example of positive
So,
thoughts?
so, we all have people in our life that have difficult natures, right?
Right.
That just seem to want to complain about something, seem to want to do something. Now, if that is starting to bother me, then I have a problem, because I'm being infected by their virus. Okay. Now, I need to figure out how not to be infected by their virus. That's number one. And the first thing I have to do, and I've done this with a person who's seems to be critical at every moment of the way, right? I just have to drop down, and first I have to do the work of seeing their goodness genuinely. So I've literally taken up pen and paper, wrote their name down, and just really focused the kaleidoscope of my intellect to tune into something actually very beautiful there and feel it, right? So I develop an energetic thing with that person in my mind first, where, look, I've seen your goodness. So it doesn't matter what you say, it can't alter that perception of mine, right? Then when the criticism starts or when the thing starts, then you can use humor and learn to be a little bit light about it, right? So I remember setting up a contract with the one particular person who always seemed to have a hang up about everything, right? And, it doesn't matter what everything happened, there was always something to complain about. So he came to me one day and I said, look, this is what's happening in our relationship right now. You come with your hang up and your complaint, you vomit it out on me. I spend 10 minutes clearing up the vomit, trying to help you make you feel happy, and then none of us are happy, right? We don't want this kind of relationship. I see you as a prince. You have some incredible dignity. You have incredible royalty. So let's make a deal. Every time you come to me with this hang up, I'm going to say to you, the prince has just fallen off his seat, his throne. Can he please sit back on his throne again? And that's your cue to stop complaining. Okay? So we played this game and we stopped. And eventually he started to laugh at himself. Eventually he started to loosen up, take himself lightly. Because I put the boundary, look, I'm not going to play this game. I'm ready to work with you, but my attitude was very, very clear and stable. Because if your attitude is clear and stable, you can help anybody else find their light. But if your attitude starts to fluctuate, forget it. It doesn't work. Any strategy, any quick fix is not going to work.
Let me just ask this. Perhaps this will be our final question for the day. How can we balance being caring while practicing self-love? Caring for others, maybe, and practicing self-love.
The basis of self-love is self-truth, being truthful with yourself, okay? And care, the basis of care is kindness. So with yourself, be truthful and honest, and with another, be kind. And that's my, see through the eyes of tolerance when you're handling others. Treat them like gentle things in your hand, And so when you really take that approach and that attitude, that whatever interaction I'm coming with, it's a flower in front of me. I'm not going to just grab the flower or squeeze the flower or snatch the flower or cut the flower, but I'm just going to hold the flower and see, okay, what do you want? What do you feel? And take an inquiry approach towards that allows their wisdom to unfurl. So being kind is very, very important in our interactions. But with the self, if you want to stay loving to yourself, you have to stay truthful with yourself.
And that's actually being more kind to the self as well, probably.
Absolutely.
Gopi, I wish I could extend this to another hour,
Jonathan.
but definitely we'll have another part.
Okay.
Part 2 of this, because this is just actually, I've been loving to just exchange insights with you. And as mentioned earlier, this is a tsunami of wisdom coming from someone who's very well experienced in spirituality and meditation. Thank you so much, Gopi, for finding time. I understand you're now in Madhuban,
Yes.
in the Brahma Kumaris headquarters, coming direct from London to give refresher courses and lectures to attending students there. How I wish you can also drop by the Philippines and bring you to other centers to share your wisdom with us. Thank you so much. We've extended our time, but we have to end.
Yes,
Thank
we
you. Thank you
do.
so much also.
And thank you, Jonathan, for the
To
opportunity.
everyone who have participated in this ResilienSerye episode. We are all reminded by Gopi that joy is not just pushy, but also sukh. It should be beyond the senses, and we must be able to bring the diamond in all of us. By being content, and our inner peace and joy can influence others positively. And as we continue the journey of the happiest Pinoy, may we remember that happiness is more than a mood. It is a practice, a choice, and a gift we can offer to others. May today's learnings ripple into your homes, your work, your relationships, and your inner world, most importantly. On behalf of Cebuana Luler Foundation and our dear friend here, Gopi, the happiest Pinoy team, and the whole ResilienSerye community, thank you, and may joy always be your strength. Thank you very much, Gopi, and to all the
Thank
listeners again.
you.
Thank you until then.